Super, hello everyone. So for this last talk, where's the doody? What's it?
Next thing, the next thing.
Cool. Okay, for the last one, let's take the Code 2026 title that we've got tonight and take it literally and go, okay, how will we be doing coding in 2026? And with that provocative title for this one, Software Engineer 2.0, this idea that maybe we need to be coming with a major new version of ourselves as software engineers in this new agentic AI era. Now I'm aware this is an interesting, controversial subject, as you said, Paul. You have to bring AI, don't you, into every talk now. Some of us are really on the bandwagon, think AI is the best thing ever. Others, perhaps, a bit more skeptical, cautious, think it's hype. Out of interest, hands up if you're on the AI bandwagon, think it's awesome. Cool, loads of us, that's brilliant, okay. Hands up, those who are a bit more cautious about it. Oh, people putting up their hands twice. Which is totally fine, right? There is reasons to be optimistic and reasons to be skeptic, right? So we'll talk just about what this means for software engineering in this talk. And let's have a look at those reasons, or a few reasons anyway, to be optimistic and pessimistic. First one, top left there, 84% of respondents are using AI tools this year, according to the Stack Overflow survey just came out a few months ago. This is not a niche thing, right? This is the vast majority now doing this. If you're not using AI to help you code, you're the odd one out, right? This is pretty standard now. 90% of code in Claude code is written by itself. Claude code is the tool that Anthropic have made to help you do coding based on Claude. In fact, Claude itself, they say, most of the Claude AI model is now written by Claude itself. This is AI writing AI. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, Hollywood has taught us some of those things, hasn't it? Right? But so obviously they would say that, right? Wouldn't they? Right, they're on the tools. But it is the engineers on the ground saying that, right? And they will be the ones who know it as well. So I think there's something interesting in that. And Sundar Pichai, the Google CEO, saying that 25% of their code is now written by AI. Again, CEOs do say these things. He said it at the same time as Satya Nadella, the Microsoft CEO, said a similar thing, right? So there's clearly a bit of banter going on there, but there's probably some number, isn't there, that's growing of code written by AI. This is now a serious thing. But reason to be skeptic too as well, right? Here's another CEO talking, this time Anthropic CEO, saying that in 3 to 6 months, AI will be writing 90% of all the code software. I put that in because he said that 6 months ago. And we're not at 90%, right? So it clearly is quite a lot of hype here. METR, the not-for-profit AI research organisation, they did a side-by-side test where they got two sets of developers, gave one Cursor, didn't give it to the other, and the ones with Cursor, the AI tool, took 19% longer than the ones that just did it themselves. Right? Now, when you read it, there's kind of reasons why, right? It was the first time they used it and so on, but you know, the jury's out, right, on a lot of this stuff. And there's disasters as well. Did you see this one a couple of months ago? Replit, that's been around for nearly a decade, doing code collaboration tools. They've launched an agent. Someone used it rather naively, and it deleted their entire production database. I mean, really? You've got an environment in which you've got a command to delete your entire production database and no backup? I think it might be the engineer's fault, really, but there are stories like that on there, which means you need to be a little bit cautious, at the very least, with this stuff. And the story of AI coding tools is just fascinating if we look at the timeline. So OpenAI, when it was very much a not-for-profit research arm, right, was doing GPT-1 and then 2, and it was in 2 in the research when they first spotted that this tokenization prediction of human languages was also working rather well for computer languages, because as it had trained on the internet, it had found tens of millions of lines of code and spotted the patterns of it. So that was the first time they spotted, by mistake, that these LLMs were good at code prediction, and then GPT-3 did it pretty well. So Copilot from GitHub came along shortly after. 2021 it was in preview, by 2022 it was launched, and that is the journey that we're now on. This is all before ChatGPT, right, when most of us in the world discovered it through that conversational interface. So going back, a good few numbers of years. But since then we've had absolutely tons of people make lots of money off this, or certainly get valued with lots of money. Cursor, which is just a fork of Visual Studio Code, right, now with $8 billion. Devin, the full AI software one, $10 billion. Replit, Lovable, all these ones doing some interesting stuff, right? But still very much startups. Will they still be valued out in the future? Who knows? Is it a bubble? Who knows? But it's the first reasoning models the deeper thinking models that came out less than a year ago that have really made the difference, right? Because those of us who've coded for a while, we know it clearly isn't just to predict the next line of code. You need to understand really what's going on. What are the bugs? What are the tests doing? That's what's really unlocked things, and it has moved so quickly in the past year. So vibe coding as a term has come along, hasn't it? With this whole different, would you need to even code at all? Yes, you do. It turns out. Claude Code launched in February, which is probably the most favourite one. Certainly on the Twitter sphere of developers. Google launched their version, Jules, which is like a souped-up Gemini. If you haven't used it, more agentic way of working. That came along in April. Then we had GPT-5 come along in August, which kind of blew all of the metrics out the water and what it can do for it. And then just a month after that, we had GPT-5 Codex, which blew GPT-5 out the water in just 6 weeks. And so there's all the benchmarks. And Claude Sonnet 4.5 came out just last week. Now, what's interesting about GPT-5 and Claude Sonnet 4.5 is they're generic LLMs, right? They're tools that we can all use for anything. But what they're doing best is coding. The first line of the press release of Claude Sonnet 4.5 last week was, this is the best model in the world for coding. So even though it's for everything, coding is the thing that's coming out the most. So we've gone from accidentally building something that can quite good at spotting code patterns to being the most important thing this incredible technology can do. That's the level of change that we're seeing. And also, just as an aside, right, we as software engineers, super clever, have invented these LLMs, and the first thing it's become brilliant at is taking our jobs. How stupid are we? Let's have a delve at GPT-5 Codex. That one's been out a month, so I've had enough time to play with it and tell you about it. The Sonnet 4.5 only came out last week, so I can't tell you much about that one. But let's look at GPT-5 Codex. Only been out less than a month. Very, very high scoring on the benchmarks, although benchmarks are not always that good at representing real world. Very good at separating between the assistive side, which is perhaps what you might have known if you've been using Copilot for a while, right, where it's helping with the auto prediction and having conversations with you about what you're doing and so on, and the agentic side, where it takes a piece of work off you and works for a long time behind the scenes to complete it. The longest OpenAI I've seen it run is 7 hours. So we're talking a substantial period. I've seen it run for half an hour, I've not quite got past that yet. But sizable amounts of times when it goes away, it does a chunk of work for you. And that kind of changes the game, as I'll talk about in a minute, because you can now have multiple of these things all working away in the background for you. There's a bunch of other benefits as well. Dynamic reasoning is about where it splits between the fast mode, the immediate response mode, and the thinking mode. The reasoning, which is very cool, just like you would do as a software engineer yourself, right? Sometimes you're churning it out, sometimes you need to step back and think. That's very clever, it's a lot cheaper, and the use of it, OpenAI talks about using it in so many ways. It's much more than coding. It's very good at helping you onboard new engineers, for example, great at helping investigating investigations, finally good at code review. GPT 4.1, we use the BBC for code reviews, it's flipping awful, it's much better at that. It's only a few weeks old, of course, I'm not jumping on the bandwagon, but the level up we've seen in a year is pretty phenomenal. So what does that mean in the years going forward? If you don't know what, here's an example of my own. I had a to-do in here, one of those things I just never got round to, right? I needed to change a particular type, but there was the implement the codex button. Press that, it wrote a prompt. I could have changed the prompt if I wanted, but it was good enough, and off it goes. It's going through lots of different files, so it can traverse code bases in the way it couldn't do before. It's very clever at maintaining its context window and summarizing things if you're understanding how it works. I don't actually know how long it took, because I kind of got bored waiting for it, which I think is kind of the point, right? So you go off and do something else. And then at some point later, I'm not quite sure, maybe half an hour, I'm not quite sure, I came back to it and there's a list of all the things that it's done, and there it is, the first one. It added 43 lines of code, removed 23. You click on it, you can see it's changed 6 files, and of course you can click undo it, and then you can undo it if you don't want it, or have a further conversation if you want it, or just accept it. So this is, do you see where we're going with this, right? A world where you have these agentic things going off in the background, taking the time, so it's much more than just helping you in the editor. And so what you therefore get is this, is OpenAI's Codex working across different ways in the editor, on the command line, but also remotely. In GitHub, you can just assign it a bug, and it'll go off and raise a PR for it. Or you can just do it in the browser, or even in your phone app. Right? So you can be in Starbucks, telling it what to do. It'll show you the code. You don't have the code on your phone, of course, but you can still work with it and and accept it and get it to raise a PR. Here's an example. This is the web version, so this isn't an editor. It's showing you the code's changed, and of course you can have a conversation with it, and once you're happy with it, the view PR will raise a pull request for you in GitHub, and off you go. That's GPT-5's version. Everyone else is doing broadly the same thing. There's Claude Code, there's Google Jules, very cleverly marketing itself, doing the coding tasks you don't want to do, the boring bits, right, the updates and so on. And Devon is the full software engineer AI, right? That's built into Slack, right? The idea is you have a conversation with it like a real human being. So, yeah, get ready. So what does that mean? Well, Mark Zuckerberg, again, do you trust the CEOs, right? Always healthy skepticism, but his argument, right? Every engineer will feel more like a tech lead in the future because they'll have this army of AI agents like we just saw going off doing these things. So what does that look like? Here you are as an engineer. Today, you work as part of a team, right? And you probably understand what the other people in your team, engineering team, are doing, right? You may be pairing with them or doing reviews or whatever. So if one of them goes on holiday, you can, cover for them. If you're in a medium or large organisation, you'll be used to the idea there are other software development teams elsewhere that you're not quite sure what they're doing. Maybe even a little sceptical of the tech choices they've made. We've all been there, and you wouldn't be able to cover for them in the same way. Now let's see how this world works, right? We have now, as an engineer, our own set of AI agents. So whereas in the old world we were writing the code and fixing the bugs and reviewing other people's pull requests, now we're delegating to this army of AI agents, managing them and reviewing what they're doing at scale. And of course, our colleagues are also doing the same thing. So all of a sudden our team has become a team of teams, right? Before, we had a close understanding of all the work in our team because we could keep across it. Now, there's a lot more code happening, a lot more change happening, much harder to oversee and understand what's going on, right? It changes the structure of the team, and if you're a team lead or an engineering manager, it changes at your level as well. But hang on, you may be thinking, what are these agents all doing? What's the actual work? And it's a good point, because this is a piece of work that Bain, the consultancy, have done, but there's been loads of things like this over the years of what is it engineers do, how do they spend their time? And it's only really a quarter of the time that you spend coding. Maybe another quarter kind of maintaining that, but half your time is spent doing the kind of business analysis, understanding, working with others, working out what it is to do. In a professional environment, your coding is not the major part of your job. So if we're saying that this is the bit that AI replaces, it's not that much, is it? It depends on the work, of course, but it's only say a double, even if you could 100% move that to AI, right? It'd only something like a doubling or a tripling. And that is what you fair. Even the Claude people admit that they're looking at 2 to 3 times best case efficiency gain. Unless, of course, you look at how AI can optimize all this bit as well, which gets even more interesting. It's also worth calling out the other disciplines that you might have, right? For QA, what's the point in going faster if your QA process is a very manual one before the release, right? You need to have faster all the way through. Your product managers, they're suddenly going to have a lot more throughput here, but that's not just a wonderful thing of faster delivery, right? There is an interesting case, you have a lot more stuff happening. Are you describing what you need in a way in which the AI could understand it and move quicker? And of course, if you get to other specialisms and other stakeholders and processes and the wider organizational business context, there's probably a whole set of things that need to change there if you're really going to get the throughput that AI expects, right? And that's why this Bain report certainly came out, I think, a month or 2 ago, pointed out that real value comes from applying generative AI across the entire life cycle. This is not just a coding thing. But let's just talk about the coding thing, because we're on the home run. And what are these skills of this software engineer 2.0? It is still critical that you're an excellent technical person. In fact, you might need to be even more technically savvy than you are in the current engineering one, because you're overseeing a bigger set of work. And you have all these agents doing things. You're still accountable for the work they're doing. You need to understand it all. And you do need to be pretty good at overseeing it, prioritizing it, explaining it, right? You'll also need to be great at communicating and collaborating, because you're making a bigger difference. So what that means to your business or whatever it is you work, right? That you need to understand and be able to communicate both ways what's going on there. You may even need to become a bit of a product manager analyst in yourself, right? Because you're describing to AI with the right prompts what it is you're doing. And you probably need to be an advocate of safe, relevant use of AI as well. Last slide then. What's the right analogy? I've always been fascinated by us as software engineers against other engineers, right? Civil engineers, mechanical engineers, whatever. We are still in our infancy as a profession compared to them, of course. But is there an interesting story here, right? As a civil engineer, they don't mix the concrete. They're overseeing it. They understand concrete and its properties and how you use it. But we are in buildings like this. We are just glad that our civil engineers thinking hard about this building and it's not going to fall down, because they are more like the cheesy ChatGPT drawn picture of the civil engineer, right? We are overseeing what's going on. We're not in the weeds, and maybe AI brings that future to us. As engineers, we are here to still take responsibility for the quality and the appropriateness of the solution, but we're not writing every line of code. So yeah, let's wrap up. Software engineer 2.0, this new role. You understand the code. You are still very technical, but you don't write much of it. Instead, you oversee a team of autonomous agents who analyze, build, test, and release these changes in parallel. To work at this pace, you're going to be really good at organizational skills and communication skills, and analytical too, but this isn't a world in which engineers are needed. Far from it. It is your technical skills and overseeing all that change and making sure it is safe, secure, appropriate, that makes you, as an engineer, more important than ever before. Right, we can go to the beer now, can't we? Thank you.